After his parents died, he had to take care of himself. Everything changed when a kind maid asked if she could work for him. As they spent more time in the same big house, their relationship became more complicated. The maid was diligent and well-mannered. However, he couldn't help but feel suspicious of her. He found it strange that a fancy maid like her would want to work in a small house. One time, he caught her in the study, seemingly muttering strange words from a mysterious book. He also thought her purple eyes were trying to captivate him on purpose. When she asked if he was curious about her, he accused her of reading his thoughts and confessed that he couldn't sleep at night because of his curiosity. The maid only offered to make him herbal tea to help him sleep better. As she served him the tea in the study, he couldn't stop wondering why everything she did seemed suspicious. He was even more troubled because she rarely spoke, so he had no idea what she was thinking. He questioned why he had hired her in the first place. When his parents died in a car crash, he had to let go of his household staff. He didn't inherit much, so he couldn't afford to keep a big staff. He was determined to take care of himself as the owner of his house. He was going to make it on his own. However, it wasn't as simple as he had imagined. He attempted to cook his own meals but often ended up burning them. When he did his own laundry, he used too much detergent, making a mess. Even his attempts at using the vacuum cleaner for cleaning turned into disasters. The arrival of the mysterious maid in the middle of the night changed everything. Initially, he told her he couldn't hire her because he wasn't wealthy and had just let go of his staff. But she said she wouldn't require payment and offered to be a live-in maid. When he looked into her captivating purple eyes, he couldn't resist and agreed. However, he couldn't deny that the food she cooked was the best he'd ever tasted. The house was always impeccably clean, and his clothes smelled wonderful after she washed them. He began to wonder if she had some magical powers. He even accused her of being a sorceress, as there seemed to be no other explanation for her exceptional skills. To his surprise, she admitted to being a sorceress, and it turned out she had been playing along with his suspicions all along. She jokingly confessed that she used her eyes to enchant him. However, she was surprised when he insisted that he had been correct all along, mentioning how he had seen her reading a magical book and reciting spells. He also described how her eyes sparkled and made his heart race. The maid became flustered when her young master brought this up and quickly excused herself, saying she needed to go shopping. She clarified that she had just been joking, and the book she was reading was actually about housekeeping. She hadn't anticipated that he would take it so seriously. Yori was determined to figure out the maid's purpose for coming to his mansion. One day, as she was hanging sheets in the backyard, he confronted her and asked what she was planning. She just grinned at him, which only infuriated him further. He demanded to know why she was smiling, and she teasingly said he looked cute when he watched her. His anger grew, and he insisted that he didn't smile like that because he found her cute, no matter how lovely the maid was. He pressed her to reveal her intentions, but she only replied that she couldn't tell him just yet. In the morning, the maid prepared yet another delicious breakfast, and he was really grateful for the meals, thoroughly enjoying his food. However, he couldn't shake a dream he had where she was a witch. Still a bit distrustful, he accused her of putting something in his food and even mentioned that he had seen her in the kitchen the night before. Once again, the maid decided to playfully tease him and confessed that she had indeed added a love potion to his food. The boy instantly believed this was the reason he felt so strongly about her, explaining why he couldn't stop staring at her and why his heart raced when their eyes met. However, the poor maid hadn't done any such thing. The only reason she had been in the kitchen at night was to study cooking. He innocently made her promise not to use love potions anymore. Later, when she called him by his name, he told her that it made it seem like they were married. She was puzzled by why he felt that way. He explained that his parents used to address each other by their names, and they were deeply in love. A bit embarrassed, the maid excused herself to go shopping. Determined to get to know her better, he searched for her name since he still didn't know it. He found a resume and discovered that she was named Lilith. He found her name suspicious but was content that he now knew something about her. However, at dinner, she called him young master once again, which surprised him. He asked her why she didn't call him by his name, and she inquired if he wanted her to say his name more often. When he agreed, she told him it would signify that they were becoming close. However, he disagreed with the idea that calling each other by names would make them close, emphasizing that he still didn't know much about her. This response left Lilith feeling disheartened, but her expression changed to a flustered one when he suggested she should tell him more about herself. Even though the young master didn't fully trust her, he recognized that getting to know each other could change that over time. After preparing breakfast for the young master, Lilith woke him up from his sleep. She had bought him new clothes and informed him that his breakfast was ready. Although he had become accustomed to living with her, there was still something suspicious about her. While he was enjoying the delicious meal she had prepared, there was a knock at the door. Lilith offered to answer it, and when she returned, she had a box containing the latest game console. His excitement was evident, but when she asked if he liked it, he suddenly realized that she was the one who had purchased it. He recalled the new clothes he had received recently, and this made him panic. He couldn't understand why she was suddenly showering him with gifts, and his mind was overflowing with suspicion. He questioned her motives, and before she could respond properly, he accused her of attempting to control him with these gifts. Blushing, Lilith once again played along with his theories and told him that he was right. She was indeed trying to tame him so that he could be hers. He swore that she could never control him, asserting that she didn't need to use gifts to prove her attractiveness. In fact, he went as far as saying that he would be the one to win her over. After a while, the young master was doing his schoolwork in his study, but Lilith kept interrupting him by continuously offering her assistance. She provided pastries and tea, asked if he needed help with his lessons, or if he wanted her to sharpen his pencil. He became increasingly annoyed by these interruptions and eventually shouted at her to be quiet because she was interfering with his studies. She instantly apologized and explained that she just wanted to be helpful. Yuri, seeing that she was going to distract him anyway, told her she might as well stay with him while he studied. After a while, Lilith said she would leave for a moment. When she didn't immediately return, he grew suspicious and decided to look for her. He found her in the backyard and thought she might be up to something. To his surprise, she was just playing with a stray cat. When she noticed him watching, she invited him to pet the cat as well. He agreed, and she teasingly said he only wanted her to pet him instead. Embarrassed, he admitted he was actually afraid of cats and couldn't bring himself to pet them, even though he admired how beautiful she looked while doing so. She offered to help him overcome his fear, but he insisted he could do it on his own. When she left him alone with the cat, he did his best to bond with it. It was challenging to get the cat to come closer to him. After some time, Lilith returned with food for the cat and asked him to feed it. The cat happily ate the fish from its bowl. Another stray cat then approached, and the first cat defended him. Realizing this, he decided to protect the cat as well. By the time Lilith returned again, he had managed to bond with the cat. Yuri was drawing a morning glory flower when Lilith came to inform him that lunch was ready. As he savored the delicious meal she had prepared, he couldn't help but wonder if there was a secret to her cooking. So, he asked her to teach him how to cook, which led them to the kitchen. She taught him how to cook, from chopping vegetables to making his favorite stew. While they were cooking, he didn't notice her adding anything special to the food. When he tasted the stew he made, it didn't taste quite the same as he expected. She explained that it was even more delicious because the secret ingredient was her love for him. He was surprised by how she always had so much love to give. As her food was consistently tasty, the house was always clean, and his clothes were well maintained. Leela blushed as she heard her young master's admiration. Later that night, Lilith found the drawing Yuri had made earlier in the day. It depicted blooming flowers, and Yuri had likened their beauty to the color of Lilith's eyes. While the young master was fast asleep, she snuck into his room to watch him slumber, as she often did. It was time for Yuri to return to school, and Lilith was fussing over him. She asked if he was sure he didn't want her to see him off. He insisted that she watch over the house for him. Before he left, she ensured his necktie wasn't loose, his hair was well groomed, and his clothes were in order. When she noticed he was just looking at her, she playfully teased him, suggesting that he was so charmed by her that he didn't want to go to school. He responded by saying they were like a married couple since his mom used to do those things for his dad as well. This comment made the maid blush, and with a red face, she reminded him that he'd be late for school. The young lady, Tsukasa, arrived at school and caught a glimpse of Yuri. She had heard from her butler, Fujisaki, about Yuri's parents' passing. She remembered how he had spoken to her back then, even though she was timid and quiet. It had made her happy when he talked to her. Now, she wanted to help him, and all she needed was the courage to speak to him. Meanwhile, Lilith was wondering why her young master was so resistant to her. She thought that he didn't believe in her capabilities as a maid, and this made her even more determined to work hard so that he would finally accept her. She went on her way to pick up Yuri, knowing that he would likely be upset with her. However, being his maid, it was part of her job to welcome him home. Yuri had actually decided to get home on his own, and he was about to do so when he spotted Lilith waiting for him. This further upset him because he had told her numerous times not to come to his school. Tsukasa, on the other hand, saw him and was about to call his attention. However, Tsukasa watched in surprise as Yuri approached another maid. She hid behind a tree and overheard Yuri scolding the maid. To her shock, she heard them talk about their special relationship and how Yuri didn't want her to go to avoid attracting attention due to her beauty. Tsukasa started speculating that they might be involved in a forbidden romance, and she became quite excited about the idea, completely engrossed in their potential relationship. She didn't notice that Fujisaki was already standing behind her until he called her name and tried to explain why she had kept the car waiting. To her surprise, Fujisaki also noticed the presence of Yuri and Lilith. It turned out that Lilith and Fujisaki knew each other. One day, Yuri came home, but Lilith was not there. Initially, he was quite pleased because he had the house all to himself. He spent his time reading and indulging in junk food while relaxing on the couch. However, unknown to Yuri, Lilith was actually in town to buy ingredients for his dinner. She needed a specific main ingredient, but it was not available in the local market. Despite the challenges, she was determined not to give up and went to another town just to obtain that ingredient. Meanwhile, Yuri started to notice that it was getting late and Lilith still hadn't returned home. He grew increasingly concerned about her whereabouts and why she hadn't informed him about coming home late. The quietness in the house and her absence began to worry the young master, and anxiety became evident on his face. He wondered why she hadn't at least left a note for him and tried calling her, only to find out she had left her phone at home. Lilith, on the other hand, was able to purchase the ingredients she needed, but the time was getting late due to delays in train car inspections. She began to feel anxious because she had left her phone in the mansion and couldn't contact Yuri at that moment. Fujisaki, who was in town to buy Lady Tsukasa's manga, spotted Lilith and offered her a ride home. When she arrived, she found Yuri slumped on the couch. Lilith frantically apologized for being late and for not being able to contact him. As the young master finally lifted his head, he accused her of casting a spell on him. He claimed that he felt sad when she wasn't around, and he insisted that this must be the explanation because he had been fine when he was alone in the past. Now, he felt lonely when he wasn't with her. A teary-eyed Yuri exclaimed that she must have cursed him because he couldn't imagine living without her. He then made her swear not to go missing without telling him in the future. Lilith was aware that her young master watched her closely, and she didn't fully understand why it had come to this. She had come to the mansion to ensure his physical and emotional well-being, as her concern for his welfare had initially motivated her. Yet, he remained suspicious of her. She understood why, of course, as she had entered his life without any warning. She didn't want to have a negative influence on him, so her intention was to become closer to him. Lilith started following him around the mansion, aiming to watch over him as much as she could. Yuri, always paranoid, thought she was trying to uncover his weaknesses and tried to evade her. However, in the process, she tripped and ended up falling on top of him. When he got up, he told her that he wouldn't run away anymore and that he wouldn't let her go either. Despite this, the young master continued to be suspicious of her. He often looked at her with a frown, such as when she was sweeping the floor. Lilith decided that she needed to be more mature and responsible to redeem herself. She confronted him and asked why he didn't get bored watching her so much. Yuri simply stated that she was suspicious and that she was diverting him from his insidious plan. He even declared that he would never grow tired of watching her because he could do so for his entire life. Lilith was becoming sad as all her attempts to get closer to her young master seemed to fail. He remained suspicious of her, and she felt desperate about how difficult it was to be close to him. In her room, she pondered and decided to try another plan. She invited him to play a game with her, suggesting that they could have fun just the two of them. They played chess, a game he had learned from his father. He explained that his parents were kind people, but they were always working. He sadly reminisced about the times when he was still able to spend time with his mom and dad. Determined, Lilith stood up and told him she was there to play with him whenever he liked. From then on, they ended up playing chess until nightfall, and he kept insisting on playing more rounds. However, one day, when Yuri returned from school, he was unusually quiet and went straight to his room. Sensing that something was off, Lilith decided to make pudding for snacks, thinking it might cheer him up. She expected him to react as he usually did, accusing her of scheming something just because she had served him pudding. Despite her effort in making the dessert, she didn't receive the reaction she anticipated. When she offered the pudding at his door, he simply thanked her and went back inside. It was the first time he hadn't been suspicious of her. Perplexed, she followed him around, expecting him to call her out and accuse her of scheming again. Lilith began to worry when Yuri went into his room without acknowledging her presence. She was unsure if he hadn't seen her or if he was deliberately ignoring her. She questioned if he had lost interest in her, and numerous other thoughts raced through her mind. Suddenly, Yuri emerged from his room holding a piece of paper. Lilith panicked, fearing that it might be a dismissal notice. However, it turned out to be an announcement about an open house day at the school, where parents and guardians were invited to visit. A reluctant and embarrassed Yuri told her that he had hoped she would come. This revelation relieved Lilith, and she gladly agreed to attend at his request. However, her master insisted that she wear normal clothes to his school rather than her usual maid outfit, as the parents and teachers there were strict. Lilith had to search her wardrobe for appropriate clothes, but none of her outfits aligned with Yuri's instructions. She felt despair as she had to find a way to comply. At school, Yuri watched as other parents and guardians arrived, looking for the familiar face of Lilith. When he couldn't find her, he felt crestfallen and convinced himself that he didn't need her to attend the open house. However, to his surprise, she did eventually arrive with Fujisaki. It turned out that she had borrowed clothes from Fujisaki to wear something suitable for her master's school. Yuri was elated upon seeing Lilith at the open house, and on their way home, he expressed his gratitude to her. He told her how happy she had made him by being there. Back at the mansion, Yuri spent his time running up and down the halls. When Lilith asked why he was darting back and forth, he told her that he was practicing for the upcoming sports day, as the halls were perfect for practicing sprints. Lilith offered to help him practice by cheering for him. When she did, she noticed that her master was not practicing, and she asked him why. He replied that she was so cute that he couldn't stop staring at her. Then, he asked her to come to the sports day to support him, and she instantly agreed. One day after school, the young master was enjoying the snacks that Lilith had made for him. He complimented her on how amazing she was for making such delicious snacks by hand. When he noticed she was holding a book, he asked her about it. She showed it to him, and it turned out to be a special sports day training plan. She wanted to help him train for the sports day. Yuri was elated to hear this. Not only would she be there to support him, but she was also willing to help him train. He sincerely thanked her, and together they trained for the various sports day events. After all the training, he started complaining about how tired he was. Lilith told him that she would give him a massage to ensure his weariness wouldn't affect him the next morning. As she massaged his sore leg, he told her how amazing she was, surprised that she could give such a great massage. However, he became suspicious again and suggested she might be using magic. Lilith simply said she knew how to make him feel good. In response, he exclaimed that it was unfair and demanded that she tell him how to make her feel good. Lilith blushed upon hearing his words. On another occasion, Yuri woke up earlier than usual and found himself walking the halls. He noticed that the kitchen door was ajar, with light streaming out from it. He saw that Lilith was already hard at work, realizing that she was always up early. She was preparing his lunch for the sports day, and he greatly appreciated her efforts. Later on, Lilith bid farewell to Yuri as he was about to head to school, and then she ran off. The sports day commenced, and the first game was tug of war. However, some of Yuri's teammates insulted him, calling him poor and telling him not to drag them down. Instead of backing down, Yuri challenged them not to do the same. Tsukasa, who witnessed the whole exchange, was amazed at how competitive Yuri had become. She heard the maid cheering for her master and realized that he had become so fiercely competitive because of Lilith. Tsukasa decided to root for him even more and approached him, suggesting that they should work as a team and do their best. Together, they managed to win the tug of war. Yuri confided in Tsukasa, telling her that he just wanted to win the sports day game so he could see Lilith smile. Tsukasa observed how Lilith approached Yuri, praised him for his victory, and called him amazing. Yuri clearly appreciated her compliments. Tsukasa was so moved by how well they got along that it got Fujisaki worried. The four of them ended up having lunch together, and Tsukasa and Yuri enjoyed the delicious food Lilith had prepared. After Tsukasa praised Lilith for being an amazing maid, Yuri suddenly became quiet. Lilith asked her master what was wrong, and he, in turn, asked if she was inconvenienced by having to attend both the open house and the sports day, as well as waking up early to make him lunch. She reassured him that she was happy to do so. Later on, Lilith found out that the parents and guardians were going to participate in an obstacle race. This reminded her of her parents. Her mom was a track runner, and her father was remarkable as well. She felt happy that her master depended on her, but she was also afraid of making a mistake. She began to wonder what her master thought of her. When the race started, Lilith initially considered herself just a hired maid, there to assist her young master in growing up healthy. When she won the race, she soon realized that he had asked her to dress comfortably to look out for her. He came to tell her how amazing she was, and she explained that she had done her best for him. But a group of other children criticized Yuri, claiming it was unfair for him to use his maid in a race meant for parents and guardians. Yuri defended her and insisted that she was his family. Lilith was deeply moved by his words, and she blushed. She thanked him for what he had said but asked if he was sure about his feelings. He reassured her strongly, stating that she was more than just a maid and that when she was happy, he was happy as well. In a somewhat amusing twist, he accused her of controlling the way he feels, once again deeming her suspicious. Lilith was buying some ingredients for supper, and she found the most scrumptious yet affordable cabbage in the store. While contemplating what to cook for dinner, she decided on making cream chicken and cabbage soup. However, as she shopped, dark clouds rolled in, and thunder began to growl ominously. Back at the mansion, Yuri was engrossed in his books when he heard the thunder and saw the rain through the window. Worried about Lilith, who had not returned home yet, he immediately rushed from the study to the door to check on her. Lilith and the items she had purchased were drenched from the rain. Without hesitation, he grabbed some towels and gave them to her to dry off. He instructed her to take a bath to prevent catching a cold. Even in the face of her serious and concerned young master, Lilith couldn't resist teasing him, maintaining an air of mystery and playfulness about her intentions and thoughts regarding him. She went so far as to invite him to take a bath with her, which left him flustered. He told her that she wasn't allowed to be so impatient and could only make such a suggestion after they were married. Surprised by his words, her face turned red, flattered by the thought of what he had in mind for their future together. The next morning, Lilith went to the study to offer a cup of coffee she had prepared for young Master Yuri. However, Yuri choked on his coffee due to its excessive saltiness. Lilith had mistakenly used salt instead of sugar. Suspicion crept back into Yuri's mind, and he decided to closely observe her as she went about her daily chores. While Yuri was watching her, a book fell on her face, causing Lilith's nose to bleed. Yuri panicked and was unsure of what to do. Lilith attempted to wipe the blood off and continue cleaning, but Yuri stopped her. He checked her forehead and realized she had a fever. Out of genuine worry, he guided her back to her room. Lilith tried to stand up and continue working, but she couldn't help but cry, fearing that her weakness and illness might lead her to be taken away from her young master, especially if he called for doctor's help. Yuri reassured Lilith that he would never replace her with anyone and would never let her leave his side. Lilith rested for the night and went back to her chores in the morning, determined to give more efficiency in her work to make up for her absence the previous night. While she was doing her chores, Yuri appeared beside her, helping by wiping the windows. Lilith was taken aback by his actions, thinking she had been keeping him tired and working because she got sick. She tried to stop him, but he told her he wanted to help, as it was another way to spend more time with her. Touched by his words, they continued cleaning the mansion together. After completing their chores, Yuri started choosing his Halloween costume for Tsukasa's Halloween party, to which they were invited. He eventually settled on dressing as a sage and allowed Lilith to choose the color of the gem to be placed on his staff. They then went over Lilith's costume, and she was excited about dressing up for the party as well. When they arrived at Tsukasa's mansion for the Halloween party, Yuri was dressed as a sage, while Lilith had made an effort to wear a dragon costume. Tsukasa screamed and expressed her adoration for the two of them, romanticizing their bond as a couple. Both Yuri and Lilith were flustered by such affection, and their reactions did not go unnoticed by the butler, Fujisaki. Yuri, Lilith, and Tsukasa entered the mansion and found themselves in a room filled with maids, treats, and Halloween decorations that reflected the wealth of Tsukasa's family and the ample number of people taking care of them. Tsukasa was dressed as a hero, Yuri as a sage, and Lilith as a dragon. Tsukasa felt that something was missing from the party, a princess in need of being saved by the hero. The maids came together and transformed Fujisaki into a beautiful princess with soft features. They all enjoyed the Halloween party, taking pictures and creating lasting memories. As the day came to an end, they bid their farewells, grateful for the fun they had shared. The next day, after school, Tsukasa found Yuri heading home and called out to him, passing him an envelope with their pictures. Yuri saw a photo of Lilith and him, both smiling while enjoying their sweets. This filled him with eagerness to return home and be welcomed by Lilith. As soon as he arrived home, he opened the door without notice and found Lilith with a sad and startled expression. He noticed her hastily hiding something and became worried and curious. He felt that his earlier statement about her being less suspicious these days wasn't true, given that she was hiding something from him. While having dinner, he realized that the food tasted unusually bland, and Lilith had been unusually silent. Breaking her silence, Lilith reminded him of the first time he tasted her food. He was suspicious at the time but was pleasantly surprised by how delicious it was. She smiled sadly and said that it would be the last time he would see her because she received a message to return to her assigned master. Yuri was infuriated and confused by Lilith's announcement that she had to leave. He tried to talk her out of it, reminding her that she promised to stay until he could uncover the mystery of her identity. Lilith cried and crumpled the letter, throwing it away, as she had decided to stay with her young master despite the message. The scene then shifted to their school, in Yuri's classroom, during their class where they were tasked to creatively color graphs. Tsukasa noticed that Yuri had colored the entire graph purple and sensed that something was bothering him. Yuri sat on a bench outside the classroom, lost in contemplate, and Tsukasa approached him to ask if he was feeling down about the assignment. Yuri replied that he couldn't stop thinking about his maid every day at school, and it was troubling him. He continued to express his thoughts, mentioning Lilith's delicious cooking and how he felt sad if Lilith was sad. He arrived at the conclusion that he must be sick. Tsukasa was dumbfounded by his confusing explanations and frustrated by what she couldn't quite understand. As Yuri headed home, he couldn't stop asking himself what love truly meant. When he arrived home, Lilith greeted him at the front door with her usual playful pickup lines that typically made him blush. However, this time, he walked past her, lost in deep thought. Lilith attempted to warm up to him a second time, but he continued to ignore her. On her third attempt, she thought she might have gone overboard with her approach, but his reaction remained the same. Concerned, she finally asked him if something was bothering him, and he tried to speak up but couldn't find the words. The next day after school, Yuri approached Tsukasa and asked her for advice regarding his feelings. Tsukasa was touched by his openness to understanding his emotions and offered to have a more in-depth discussion about his feelings at her place, as well as to help him understand what love meant. At Tsukasa's place, Yuri was introduced to her mother, who welcomed him with open arms. They enjoyed financiers, a delicious treat that Tsukasa loved. During their conversation, Tsukasa asked if they could invite Lilith to their tea party, but Yuri's fear of losing Lilith to serve Tsukasa's family began to overwhelm him. Tsukasa reassured him, believing that Lilith seemed very happy being with him and that their bond was strong. Yuri couldn't help but feel inadequate, wondering if he could truly make Lilith happy. Tsukasa's comforting words made him feel better, and the topic shifted back to discussing love. Tsukasa offered him numerous romantic books to help him better understand the feeling through the context of literature. When Yuri arrived home, Lilith welcomed him at the front door. He stood there, facing her for a moment, and Lilith was puzzled by his lingering stare. Suddenly, Yuri blushed, overwhelmed by the thought of making Lilith happy by his side. The next day in their homeroom, the teacher assigned them a task to create a piece of art that could capture the true nature of something or someone. Yuri was determined to draw Lilith for his assignment while also attempting to achieve his goal of revealing her true nature. He was able to complete a drawing of her for the very first time, but when he showed it to Lilith, he seemed unsatisfied with his work. He decided to start over from scratch. Lilith complimented his initial drawing, but Yuri insisted that it didn't capture her sensuality, beauty, and style to his liking. He put in multiple attempts, but he couldn't seem to satisfy himself and lost sleep overthinking it. Lilith tried various methods to help him relax and sleep, like tucking him in, giving him milk, and playing soothing music, but none of them worked. It wasn't until she suggested sleeping with him that he was finally able to get some rest. Yuri woke up feeling refreshed and energetic, and he mentioned that he had a dream about his mother singing the lullaby Lilith used to sing him when he was a child. The following day, he completed the drawing and showed it to his class on time. He expressed his admiration and gratitude to Lilith in front of the class, acknowledging her as an important member of his family. Yuri's drawing even won an award in the school's drawing competition. During another dream, Yuri saw a girl with purple hair as he made a flower ring for her. When he got closer to the girl, she disappeared, and Lilith's sweet expression replaced hers. This left him wondering why Lilith was still working on her scheduled day off. She explained that she felt responsible for the morning duties despite her day off, showing her dedication to her role as his maid. Lilith informed Yuri that she would be going out on her day off, and she looked stunning in her maroon-colored dress. Upon seeing her beauty, Yuri's pencil fell to the ground, and he realized that she might be dressing up for a date. This idea troubled him. When Lilith asked him if it was alright for her to take the day off, he assured her that it was his duty as a master to allow his servants personal time. She went to meet someone, but as she waited, she was led by a delightful scent to a bakery filled with pastries, sweets, and the bread that Yuri enjoyed. She decided to buy some treats for him. Lilith, while heading to the cafe, saw two young kids playing and couldn't help but worry about Yuri back at home. However, she set these thoughts aside when Fujisaki arrived, and they began discussing the important matter they were there for. They talked about Lilith's constant worry for her young master, and she eventually asked Fujisaki if she ever worried about Tsukasa. Initially, Fujisaki denied it, but Lilith could sense that she envied the bond between Tsukasa and her maid, which seemed deeper than the one she had with Yuri. Lilith confessed that she hadn't fully opened her heart to Yuri yet and was still anxious about it. However, Fujisaki pointed out how much she had changed from being the rumored worst student at their maid school to becoming a loving and responsible caretaker for Tsukasa. This conversation made Lilith realize the strength of her own relationship with her young master. Received a text from Tsukasa, who was ecstatic to find out about their conversation and what Lilith had shared with Fujisaki. Meanwhile, Yuri had been secretly following Lilith, consumed by paranoia about who she was with. He noticed a mother and child nearby, and when the mother sang a lullaby to her son, something in Yuri's mind and heart was stirred. Yuri returned home before Lilith arrived and waited for her at the front door. When she arrived with goods for him, he directly confronted her about their conversation with Fujisaki and expressed his fear of her leaving him. He also mentioned the girl his parents had brought home and asked Lilith if she was that girl all along. She nodded, and he expressed his frustration about her secrecy on this important topic. Lilith, understanding the need for transparency, decided to open her heart to him. Lilith had a chance to see Yuri in the garden, where he was already awake. He gave her a flower ring, reminiscent of their childhood memories. After school, Yuri had an encounter with Tsukasa, who was eager to learn about the progress of his feelings for his maid. Yuri simply said they had slept together, keeping his true feelings to himself. Realizing that Lilith was also anxious, Yuri rushed home to confess his love for her. However, as he arrived, an orange-haired maid delivered the news that Lilith was needed to return to her previous assignment at the mansion where she used to work. Nakashima Natsume, a former classmate and worker from that mansion, was also present. They provided her with tea and urged her to return. When Lilith asked for Natsum's opinion on what would happen if she refused to return, she awaited her response. Natsum expressed her concerns, arguing that Lilith was better off serving her former master, given the child's inability to provide for her. Yuri, however, vehemently objected, asserting that Lilith was his maid. His words transformed into a heartfelt plea to keep Lilith by his side. Despite all their discussions, Lilith remained firm in her decision to stay with Yuri. Natsum decided to remain in the small mansion, observing Lilith's diligent work in order to reach a final decision. She began by testing Yuri's qualifications as a master. She inquired about his knowledge of the theory of relativity, to which Yuri explained that he was studying financial management and showed her his piggy bank filled with his allowance, which he intended to use for a future gift for Lilith. Yuri's sincerity and thoughtfulness deeply moved Natsum, although she still couldn't believe in his goodness. Frustrated, Natsum was on the verge of saying something hurtful about her young master, but the weight of her words caused the lamp on the table to fall and break. Yuri expressed his genuine concern for Lilith's well-being. He asked her to fetch a broom to clean up the broken lamp. He mentioned that Natsum must love Lilith, considering the effort she had put into trying to bring her back for her own good. In the midst of this conversation, Natsum felt embarrassed but managed to find the courage to confess his feelings to Lilith. He revealed his love for her, baring his heart to the one he cared about deeply. The next day, Yuri went to school and told the two maids that he was leaving. They stayed behind at home. Lilith was eager to clean and do chores, so she swept the floor and wiped the windows. She told Natsum not to help her because she was treated as a guest. When Lilith finished her chores, she decided to rest and have tea with Natsum. However, she realized it was time for Yuri to come home from school. She went to the front door to welcome him. When Yuri entered the house, he was sweating a lot. He expressed his love for Lilith and said he had been thinking about her all day. This embarrassed Lilith and Natsum because Yuri's confession was too direct. Natsum remembered how kind her master had been to her when she was younger and felt less brave than Yuri for not expressing herself. When Lilith asked about it, Natsum shrugged it off and walked away. Later, when Yuri returned after changing his clothes, he asked Natsum if she was really a maid because she wasn't good at chores. This insulted her, and she tried to prove her skills by pulling a pail of water recklessly, but she ended up falling and splashing both Lilith and herself. Yuri was worried about their well-being and suggested they take a bath to avoid catching a cold. Lilith invited Natsum to join her in taking a bath, and although Natsum was flustered, she didn't decline the offer. While bathing together, they had an honest and heartfelt conversation. Lilith apologized for being tough on Natsum and expressed her belief in Natsum's sincere and pure love. However, Lilith also wanted Natsum to understand and respect her own wishes. Having Natsum with her made Lilith quite happy, as it relieved the burden she felt regarding how her actions were perceived by the young masters. Yuri, in particular, had become less suspicious of her and had started to trust her more. Natsum remarked that she believed Lilith's heavy feelings stemmed from the overwhelming happiness of knowing that the master adored her. This caused a blush and flattery to appear on Lilith's face. As Natsum thought more about the young master's personality, she began to understand why Lilith was so resolute about staying in the mansion, despite any challenges she might face. On a sunny day at the mansion, Lilith went in search of Natsum. However, upon entering the room, she found it empty except for Natsum's bag of chips and an empty glass of juice. Lilith decided to bake some cookies for Natsum to enjoy and wondered where she had gone. Before leaving, Lilith noticed an open magazine on the table, open to a page featuring Christmas gifts. She couldn't help but giggle, thinking that perhaps Natsum had someone special in mind for Christmas. Meanwhile, Natsum left the mansion and headed to Yuri's school on a typical chilly day. While at school, Tsukasa continued to pester Yuri about his relationship with Lilith and what was happening between them. Tsukasa had romantic notions in mind for the two of them and kept asking Yuri about their relationship. Yuri contemplated for a moment and explained that another family member had joined the mansion, and Tsukasa's soul had left her body because she had been thinking about an unborn child. Luckily, the reality was different from what she had expected. As Yuri left the campus, he talked about Natsum's presence in the mansion and how it had made the house more vibrant. Natsum noticed Yuri approaching her, and for a brief moment, she thought Tsukasa might be someone Yuri was cheating with, even though he had confessed his love for Lilith. This initial anger dissipated when she saw Fujisaki, who had come to take Tsukasa for her piano lessons. Yuri and Natsum then walked back home, and Natsum shared her plans to give Lilith a Christmas gift as a way to express their gratitude and love for her. However, when she asked Yuri if he had any idea what Lilith wanted, he was just as clueless. On their way home, while having a discussion, Yuri was intentionally bumped by two male strangers who demanded he pay for the buns that had fallen on the ground. Yuri retorted, saying that they were at fault. This response angered the strangers, and they attempted to attack him. Natsum intervened and used her charisma to stop them from hitting Yuri. She also reminded him to stay out of trouble as it would worry Lilith, to which he agreed. Once they returned home, they entered a room to discuss their secret plan. They wanted to throw a Christmas party to celebrate with Lilith. They talked more about how to prepare and how to keep the surprise a secret. The next day, Yuri went to school, while Natsume was preoccupied with figuring out what Lilith would want for Christmas. Yuri bumped into Tsukasa at school and shared his plans about hosting a Christmas party for Lilith. Tsukasa, being the ever-supportive romantic, readily agreed to help him achieve this goal. She suggested discussing the details at her mansion, and they did just that. With their preparations now complete, the only remaining task was to keep Lilith away from the mansion while they decorated and got everything ready for the party. Later that night, while Yuri was having dinner, Natsume brought up the idea of celebrating Christmas. Lilith smiled at the idea and inquired about Yuri's plans. Yuri explained that he wouldn't be celebrating Christmas with them as he had received an invitation to a Christmas party from Tsukasa. Natsume then asked Lilith if she could spend Christmas with her, and Lilith agreed with enthusiasm. Although Yuri was slightly disappointed by this news, Lilith agreed to his plans and felt a sense of responsibility to give him a gift. During sleeping hours, Lilith would light her candle and work on finishing the crocheted scarf she intended to give to Yuri. However, Yuri caught her in the act, and he came in to tell her something. On Christmas Day, Natsume and Lilith were getting ready to leave the mansion to celebrate outside. Lilith was concerned that Yuri might get lost while going to Tsukasa's mansion alone, but Yuri assured her that he wouldn't. The plan to keep Lilith out of the house went smoothly. Right on time, Fujisaki and Tsukasa arrived to begin their preparations. Tsukasa complained about being assigned to make decorations while Yuri and Fujisaki were busy frosting the cake and cooking the evening's meal in the kitchen. Yuri asked if the frosting was good enough, and when Fujisaki wiped some frosting off his nose, she mentioned that she had become accustomed to such activities with Tsukasa, and it wasn't complicated. Yuri expressed his envy of the warmth and closeness between Tsukasa and Fujisaki. Fujisaki blushed at the compliment and reflected on how she had changed since Tsukasa came into her life. Before long, Tsukasa was already taking pictures of the two, but Fujisaki confiscated the photos. Tsukasa complained about not being with them while preparing, so Fujisaki asked her to help by placing strawberries on the cake. While Natsume was feeling nervous and anxious, she tried to distract Lilith. Lilith noticed Natsume's unease and asked if something was wrong. Natsume got flustered and stumbled as she attempted to buy them crepes. They sat down on a bench, and Natsume wiped away the blood from her nose. She broke the silence and apologized for joining Lilith when she might have had other plans with someone else. The misunderstanding left Natsume feeling even more flustered, and she explained her perspective. Once everything was clarified, they enjoyed their outdoor meal and celebrated Christmas together. On their way home, Lilith surprised Natsume with cute ribbon hair clips as a Christmas gift, and in return, Natsume gave Lilith her gift. When Lilith opened the box, she found a cute pen inside. Natsume wanted Lilith to use this pen to respond to her letters, and it brought genuine happiness to Lilith. When they finally arrived at the front door of the mansion, everything was dark, and suddenly the lights came on. Natsume was awed by the beauty of the surprise. As she turned her head to invite Lilith inside to see it, she realized that Lilith had disappeared. The brightness inside the mansion piqued her curiosity, and she decided to go inside. To her surprise, it was Natsume who was greeted by the others. Lilith explained that Yuri had told her the truth about the surprise when he saw her knitting in the room the previous night. He couldn't bring himself to lie to her and decided to surprise Natsume instead. Overwhelmed with happiness, Natsume fell to her knees, deeply moved by the surprise. The celebration took place, and everyone, including Tsukasa and Fujisaki, enjoyed the food and the festivities. Lilith diligently cleared up the mess and clutter from the Christmas party, transforming the place into a sparkling home for her young master. The hall radiated sophistication, and Lilith looked around with satisfaction. Thanks to the help of the young master and Natsume, the task was completed quickly and easily. With joy, Lilith had the idea to prepare some tea before the young master returned home from shopping. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the mansion's gate, and a man in a pale green suit walked to the door and rang the doorbell. Lilith, who had been preparing dinner, heard the bell and went to the door, where she was stunned to find her former master. She let him in, walking down the street on their way back to the mansion. Natsume, who had been with Yuri, complained about the weight of the groceries he was carrying. As they walked, a little later, she broke the silence and thanked Yuri for allowing her to express her feelings and affection for Lilith after being apart. Now, she was willing to go back and express her love for her master. Confused, Yuri asked her why she loved both Lilith and her master at the same time. Natsume tried to explain the different types of love a person can feel for different people, hoping that he might understand it in time. Afterward, they hurried home to bring Lilith the things she needed in the mansion and have supper together. Back at the mansion, Lilith served her old master a cup of freshly made tea, and he began asking her about her life in the mansion. Initially, her answers were brief. However, she sincerely apologized for leaving him and his mansion behind. The calm old master pressed further and asked if her departure had something to do with her past. Lilith then explained that when her parents passed away, she lost her home and was shuffled from one relative to another. When she had nowhere left to turn, Yuri's parents offered her hope and a place to stay, providing her with a sense of security. She mentioned that her stay in their home was partly a gesture of gratitude to her parents and mainly because Yuri's parents didn't want to abandon her, just as her own parents had done. Lilith continued her story, sharing that when she reached the right age, she had decided to enroll in a boarding school to give back to Yuri's parents once she graduated. However, when she was close to achieving her goal, she was assigned to take care of her old master. Then came the tragic news that Yuri's parents had passed away in an accident. At that moment, all Lilith could think of was being there for Yuri because she saw herself in him, feeling like she didn't belong anywhere and had nowhere to go. This narrative resonated with her old master and helped him understand her intentions better. As their discussion was coming to an end, Yuri and Natsume arrived just in time to see Lilith and her old master together. Natsume's face turned red at the sight of him, knowing he was there to fetch her. Lilith introduced her old master to Yuri, who felt threatened that he might take Lilith away from him. The old master laughed at Yuri's concern and assured him that he had no intention of taking Lilith away. He had not prepared for them to leave. He thanked Lilith for taking care of Natsume and bid farewell. Lilith also expressed her gratitude to her old master for understanding, and he smiled, looked at Yuri, and asked him to take care of Lilith. Soon after, the old master and Natsume left. They both had dinner, but it felt awkward given the extended time they had spent with Natsume. Eventually, Lilith gathered the courage to ask Yuri if he wanted to go out with her, which he considered a date. On the cold and shivery day that followed, they went out for a walk. While walking, Yuri complimented Lilith on her dress, telling her how good she looked in it. Her face turned red, and she tried to control her emotions. She suggested they warm up with some hot cocoa at a cafe. In the cafe, they had a conversation about various topics. As he stared at Lilith, Yuri mustered the strength to take her somewhere special. They both visited his parents' grave, and Yuri felt remorse for not having visited them sooner. He had been hesitant to go to their graves alone, but with Lilith by his side, he introduced her to his parents. Before leaving, Lilith softly spoke and expressed her gratitude to them, assuring them that they didn't need to worry about Yuri because she would be there to take care of him. As they left the central block of the city, it was adorned with bright lights, shining in the darkness of the skies, and the snow was about to fall. Yuri was mesmerized by Lilith's beauty and ended up staring at her for much longer than he had expected. Lilith noticed his gaze and became flustered, asking him why he was staring. Yuri, with unwavering sincerity, told her, "I love you, Lilith. Every moment I spend with you makes me happy." Lilith blushed a deep shade of red upon hearing this unexpected confession. She asked him to clarify what type of love he felt for her, expressing her concern that she might not be able to respond to his love right away. In response, she reassured Yuri that as he continued to understand and define the kind of love he felt for her, she would be right beside him throughout the journey. They both made a promise to continue loving each other, and as the snow began to fall, they headed home together. That's it for this video. Watch the following video, and I'll catch you in the next one.